It is very far from encouraging at this particular time to see today being the 19th of November 2020 that particularly hardy pestilence of the FreeMan and the LAnD movement still hasn't gone away. For those who are not familiar with me or my channel or with things going on in Ireland, anybody who knows me for 5 seconds will know that the FreeMan and the LAnD movement, which is a subset of pseudo law, is one of my absolute pet hates and has been for 6 years. Whatever may be going on the alternative scene at the moment, they're the one group of people I still absolutely refuse to associate with, refuse to support, refuse to be seen with. That is among many other reasons why I don't go to public protests, because there are certain people who are now indelibly marked with the FreeMan and the LAnD movement who are at those protests and who are given an audience. One of them is Ben Gilroy. Ben Gilroy deserves no credible audience from any group of credible people. And the reason why that applies to Ben Gilroy is because there is now at least one very substantial ruling of the High Court in relation to his contempt of court, in which he is also found to be a proponent of pseudo law. I will not associate with those kind of people. End of story. Now, I first came across the FreeMan and the LAnD movement in Ireland in 2014 when they were actively undermining the civil disobedience campaign against Irish water. They very nearly succeeded in undermining the civil disobedience campaign against Irish water. It was just by possibly divine intervention or something that they managed not to. There were also some very important posts put online at the time saying that the tactics being advocated by the FreeMan and the LAnD movement, particularly Direct Democracy Ireland, were going to fail. And I remember that particular post well and being very pleased with it, because it was not just saying, it wasn't just me saying the same thing. In Ireland, it's called FreeMan and the LAnD. I don't know what it's called in England. In America, it's generally broadly associated with the sovereign citizen movement. But they're all the same thing, and the actual properly established title of it is pseudo law or pseudo legal practices. I'm not going to go into too many details about it now, but look it up. Look up pseudo law, look up pseudo legal practices. If you want to post on any social media thread of mine trying to lecture me about how I should do the research, I'll block you. I've done the research. I've probably done it better than anybody who's going to try and contradict me. Don't come on lecturing me about pseudo law, Magna Carta, being a sovereign citizen, natural law, corporate entities, or all the rest of that complete load of fucking bullshit. Take it away from me. Don't bring it near me. There used to be a comedy series, an animated comedy series from the US called King of the Hill. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. But one of the characters in King of the Hill was a man called Dale Gribble. And Dale Gribble was a well-observed character. They got it right with Dale Gribble. Dale Gribble would be a classic FreeMan and the LAnD, sovereign citizen, pseudo-legal proponent. One of the most important things to be a FreeMan and the LAnD is to be semi-literate. So in other words, these people who are propagating pseudo-law, or they use the term common law, must always have remedial standards of literacy. That doesn't stop them from going around acting effectively as legal advisors to people who are vulnerable. But what one sees when you get in pseudo-legal documents is that the actual basic standard of literacy, and I'm speaking here as an English teacher as well, the basic standard of literacy is below par. I don't want to sound like a condescending prick of a teacher, but frankly, you have to be blunt about these people. One of the reasons why you have to be blunt is because when you look at the destruction that pseudo law does, it causes terrible damage, and people need to speak out strongly against pseudo law. Of everything on the crank movement, I would call it worse even than the anti-vaxxers. And I have very little time for them as well. Okay, I'm not going to get a vaccine for COVID-19. That's my personal choice. Generally, broadly, in principle, I'm pro-vax. Broadly, I'm pro-vax. But I do believe that people should have the right to refuse vaccines. That's their own personal decision. If the vaccine is good enough, then we'll get enough people in the community who'll take it and it'll have its effect. A vaccine under no circumstances requires 100% of the country to get it. That's not how vaccines work. If 70 to 75% of people in the country are willing to get a vaccine, then it'll work. Looking at the COVID-19 vaccine, there's more than 70 to 75% of this country is willing to get that. Those are all the people who are mainlined onto RTE in the Irish Times, so let them. If they want to get a vaccine, let them. I'm not getting a vaccine for COVID-19. I'm not going to get any more vaccines in my life, probably. You know, I'm 47 now. I'm going to be 48 next year. I've lived this long with whatever vaccines I got when I was a baby or an infant. I'm okay. I'll survive. But getting back to FreeMan and the LAnD, one of the most destructive recent instances of it in Ireland is the McGanns in Strokestown. And that's a very, very sad scenario. That's an extremely sad scenario because those people were vulnerable and were misled. I recently saw documentation that was brought into court, not only about 3 or 4 weeks ago, in regards to the McGanns, and it is a steaming pile of bullshit from start to finish. So when a judge sees shit like this, he or she is just going to say, I can't have that. I've seen that happen myself in the High Court, in which a judge will look at it and say, this document isn't going to be opened in court today, go off and get it done by a solicitor. But I'm a sovereign, not in my courtroom, get out. Indeed, on one occasion, I very seriously upbraided a judge who began to suggest that I might be using that, and I pushed that judge very firmly in his place, and I said, you're obviously not doing your homework about me and how much I oppose that. I'm a lay litigant. I'm exercising my constitutional right to represent myself. Under no circumstances am I going to employ pseudo-legal techniques in your court or anybody else's court. That doesn't mean I win every case. That's another pseudo-legal. That's another thing that the FreeMan and the LAnD fall into. They seem to think that if you come out with this magic bullshit, this little pile of magic beans, that you're going to win everything in front of you. No, what you're going to do is lose everything in front of you and possibly go to jail, lose your home, lose all your money, and maybe even get a criminal record. In Ireland, there isn't a hard enough line taken on pseudo-law. This has been going on in the courts now for over 10 years. We should have clamped down a lot harder on it. And yet it's still tolerated. And then you have to ask, why is there so much relative leniency in the system for what is obviously a wrong theory and a wrong approach? And if I want to be a real conspiracy theorist, it's because if people who are having their homes or farms repossessed actually went about things the right way, then nobody'd get their homes or farms repossessed. You know, some time ago, earlier this year, somebody was chasing me for a bill of costs and they were claiming 40,000. Okay, I said, right, look, I said, let's go in front of the taxing master in the High Court. I said, or you can drop it. Oh no, we're going to pursue this. Great, I said, perfect. Well, you pursue away, I said, and we'll go in front of the taxing master and we will evaluate actually how much you think you should be getting. You want 40,000, we'll put that in the hands of the taxing master. So in front of the taxing master, I argued it down to 19,000. So I then said to the taxing master, right, the taxing master said, this is a court, but I have no equitable jurisdiction here. I said, I can't strike out the order against. No, that's fine, I said, but I want to now go into the High Court in front of a judge at the High Court and maybe seek to have this reduced to 1,000 based upon the fact that I have no more money than that. Well, he said, you know, you're at liberty to do that. So what I then did, once we'd got this 19,000 bill of costs, I immediately, that is the next day, filed what is called a miscellaneous common law application in the High Court, and I served it upon the other party, and they telephoned me that evening to say, we're not going on with this. So we went from 40,000 to 19,000 to 0. And one of the reasons why was because I had offered them 1,000. I said, look, I can afford to pay you 1,000 for this. I said, it's not your legal costs. It's not going to make up what you have obviously outlaid on this. But I said, I'll be able to show the courts that I made an offer to you. I made you, you know, a genuine offer as much as I could. And I tried to act with equity here. You know, and they wouldn't have it until then. I went for the miscellaneous common law application and they folded that day. And the reason why they folded that day was because they were being harsh and they were being inflexible. But the reason why they folded also was because I had gone about the system the right way. So rather than trying a whole load of sovereign citizen shite with them, or the judges or the registrars or the taxing master. I had embraced the system the legal way that they have set down. And if you do that, you'd be very, very surprised the positive results that you can get. So I went from a 40,000 euro demand to an actual order of 19,000 against me, which they then decided to wash their hands of when I decided to go down the proper route using what's called a miscellaneous common law application. Now, already the Dale Gribbles who might be listening to this are saying, but you use common law, you use common law. Common law is equity. Equity is absolutely the Cinderella of the courts. It falls down somewhere behind, equity falls down somewhere behind ministerial orders, county council orders, primary statute of the courts and the Constitution. Equity is the poor relation of the courts, but sometimes you can pull it in. In that instance, I managed to do so quite simply because they were not being equitable. I had approached them from the start. I said, I can offer you 1,000. Oh, no, we're not having this. Okay, great. I said, well, let's go to court. We went to court and I ended up having to pay them nothing. Now, that was because ultimately they decided, probably having got legal advice, that I had embraced the system the right way, properly. I hadn't tried any pseudo law. I hadn't tried any bullshit. I'd been courteous. I'd done it properly. I had not ignored any of the demands. I had gone to court. I had made them an offer. They were probably advised to drop it. The costs of fighting this will be more than €1,000. So that's why they dropped it. But we had a gentleman's agreement that I wouldn't name them. And we had a gentleman's agreement also, and it was very clear that they were dropping it without any precedent, and it was completely without prejudice on their part. So the fact that they dropped it with me doesn't mean they'll drop it with anyone else. But that was how I got out of a €40,000 demand. Earlier this year, or around October, I brought a judicial review. I was granted leave for a judicial review in Howth. That was in the Irish Times. There were 2 judicial reviews reported in the Irish Times. In June of this year, Mary Carolan reported on me being given leave to seek judicial review in relation to one site in Howth. But I actually, and it wasn't reported, got leave in a second site in Howth in July. And the July case, where I got leave in July, it had its substantive hearing in October, and I lost. I had been granted leave on 15 grounds, and none of them was upheld. I had also sought a protective costs order, and all of the other side just said, we're not going after you for that. It's okay. It's, it's all right. So the final order of that case was finalised last Thursday, 7 days ago, and it said by consent there should be no order of costs. So that's how you do it. That whole court case cost me about €2,000 in total, and 1,500 of it was getting the transcript. So, there are ways of going about these things. I can't give legal advice to anybody. Please don't contact me looking for legal advice. I'll ignore you or I'll block you. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just representing myself. But what I did was I listened and I watched and looked and learnt. From barristers and from solicitors and people who actually know how the system works. I didn't listen to losers on the FreeMan and the LAnD scene. And they are losers. They're losers, they're cranks, they're misfits, they're misanthropes. They're not the kind of people you want to have in your team or on your tribe, and they're most certainly never going to be let onto my tribe. A while ago, some years ago, I was talking to a man, and he said, come here and I'll ask you a question. Oh, fuck, I said to myself, oh, Jesus. Go on. I said, go on. I knew it was coming. This fella, right, and I heard about this. Get to the fucking point, I said. Goes into court, right? And he's up for driving through the toll bridge. Just for those of you who don't know the toll bridge in Dublin, we have a motorway toll bridge across the River Liffey at the Westlink Bridge. There used to be huge tailbacks when there were barriers there when people had put their cash in. So what the Irish government did was they got rid of the barriers and they put up a very advanced system, one of the most advanced such systems in the world, where you just drive through, your number plate is recorded, and then you have to pay for your toll afterwards. If you have a tag on your car, like I do, it's paid automatically out of your credit card, and it's a lot cheaper. those tags on your car work on all of our toll roads in the country, so they just get it out of your hair. It's very convenient, and there's a big discount for using them, for using a tag. And any person can get a tag. It's not a commercial thing. Any private citizen can get a tag on their car. And some of the tags, actually, in the one we have, also works in car parks. So there's a lot to be said for it, actually. Anyway, this person says to me, fella goes into court, right? Goes into court. And he's up for not paying the tolls on that fake toll road, that unconstituted. Get on with it, I said. Right, goes into court, and he's charged, and he hasn't paid his tolls in 3 years. Hasn't paid his tolls in 3 years. Goes on in court, right? Goes on in court. Turns around and he says to the judge. This is what he says. It says to the judge, right? It'll tell you. It says to the judge, fucking get on with it, you twat. Says to the judge, says to the judge, show me the contract. And this person who was going through this, shall we say, discursive conversation with me, as soon as he said, show me the contract, he then started shaking from left to right and laughing. It's indescribable, really. So, your man says to me, goes into the judge and says, show me the contract. What do you think of that? I said, has anybody ever told you that you're a fucking simpleton? There's no need to be like that. Well, I said, there's every need to be like that, because you are a fucking simpleton. Has anyone ever told you that you're a moron? Well, what happened to your man who went into court? I said, he got 6 months in prison and a fine of €15,000. I never heard about that. I said, there's many things you've never heard about, you fucking simpleton. There's many things you've never heard about, obviously. I said, maybe it had words that had more than 2 syllables in it. That would have been over your head. That's because you're a moron. Right? I said, this is kind of the golf club equivalent of re. There was this major re opening and folding in front of me here. But surely there has to be a contract. No, there doesn't, I said. But how are they able to do that? I said, have you ever heard of an act of the Oireachtas? No, you're just being a smart arse. No, I said, you're being a smart arse. You're being a smart arse for supporting another smart arse who thought he could go into court and get out of paying a bill that he was required by law to pay. And this is the same with TV licenses. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be that way, but that's the way that it is. An act of the Oireachtas has prescribed that if you drive over that toll road at Strawberry Beds in Dublin, then you are required by an act of the Oireachtas to pay for it. Now, this gets back, I suppose, to the Irish water thing and the people who thought that you could get out of paying your Irish water bill by saying there wasn't a contract. There is a hierarchy of liability. That's my own term. But they use the term hierarchy in the courts a lot. You can be found liable by the courts under a number of different headings. The strongest heading you can be found liable for is under statute. So if you take the toll roads and the TV licenses and Irish water, you drive through a toll bridge, you should have known that there was a statutory provision requiring you to pay for that. That is not a contract. That is a legally binding obligation on your part. How do you get out of it? It's easy. You don't drive through the toll bridge. That's how you get out of it. And of course, another principle in law is that ignorance is no defence. So the fact that you did not know that there is a legal requirement upon you to pay doesn't count. Don't drive over the toll road. If you don't want to pay, don't drive over the toll road. It costs me €2.50 to drive over that bridge. It's not exactly going to break the bank in Monte Carlo to fucking do it. But that is a statutory requirement under statute. If you don't like it, don't drive over it. Let's talk about statute for a second. Statute comes across, there are 3 types of statute in Ireland. The strongest type of statute is an act of the Oireachtas, that is the Dáil, the Seanad, then signed into law by the President. The second strongest type is what's called a statutory instrument. That is an order given by a minister. And the minister has, in primary statute, that is an act of the Oireachtas, been given a delegated right to make certain orders. So that's constitutional, that's legal, and it's enforceable law. Unless you can bring a case in the High Court saying that it was unconstitutional, that has happened. And in one particular case, a ministerial order was overturned in the High Court because the High Court found that the primary legislation of the Dáil, the Seanad and the President had not given the minister that specific right to issue such an order. That's how you overturn it. But you should assume that the legislation allows the minister to issue those orders. The next type of secondary legislation is orders or acts or resolutions passed by local authorities, the county council. They have the right to do that kind of thing as well, but again, that is curtailed very strongly by primary acts of the Oireachtas that set the boundaries that they can work within. So that is how statute works in Ireland. It works in, you take the United States, you know, that's the Constitution of the United States as a federal Supreme Court, but then you go to the 50 states, they have their own laws. And, you know, those are binding, and then you'll find within the states that they have the counties, they have cities, and there's a lot of devolution in the United States that we don't have in Ireland, possibly because we've only a population of 4 million anyway. We don't need it. It's perfectly sensible for Ireland to be centralised. Centralisation works. That was a load of bullshit Fianna Fáil came out with a few years ago just to waste more fucking taxpayers' money on their cronies. That's, I'm digressing. But to get back to the core point of this video, the FreeMan and the LAnD practice, pseudo law practice, usually they all, you know, with pseudo law people, it's only a matter of time before they start shiting on about Magna Carta. Magna Carta, you know, doesn't work. Forget about Magna Carta. And I know there's going to be people posting in response to me now in this video saying, oh, but Magna Carta, no, you know, okay, right, whatever. You believe whatever bullshit you want to believe. But to anyone who wants to contradict me, you come back and show me the ruling and the case record number of any case where pseudo-law techniques, FreeMan and the LAnD techniques, common law techniques like that have worked. I've been asking people to do that for 6 years. You show me one case where pseudo-law, no contract, no consent, return to sender, or any of that bollocks has worked. And nobody's been able to. What they then say is, do the research. Oh no, you stupid fucking cunts, I've done the research. I've done the research. I know what it's like to lose cases in the High Court, but also very occasionally, very, very occasionally, I know what it's like to win. You know? I also know what it's like to be able to negotiate out of big bills of costs and that kind of fucking thing. And also how to avoid being hit with a bill of costs. And I don't want to sound smug in this particular video, but it depresses me to see in this very, very pressured time that we're in now, that the FreeMan and the LAnD stuff is still fucking raising its head. Then you have to say, well, why are the judges and why are the politicians not clamping down harder on this? Because it is seditious. You know, these FreeMan people, they waste shitloads of court time with their bullshit. So why is this still being tolerated? And that's actually closer to the conspiracy theory if you really want to go to it. Because if people like the ones on the farm had not come... I mean, I saw recently a document that was submitted in court in relation to the people on the farm. And it was very sad, and I was very, very sad when I saw it. Genuinely, I was saddened when I saw it, because they were using FreeMan and the LAnD techniques, and they were still using them up to 3 weeks ago. And, you know, it's sunk. I'm afraid there's no hope. If they're going to be using that kind of thing, there's no hope. It's now too late for them to stay in their farm. It's too late for them. It's all gone too far now. The process has now gone too far, really, to be able to rescue them. And they were misled by somebody. Don't know who, I can guess, but they were misled. Completely misled in relation to using one of the things that it said in the document, in relation to using pseudo law. One of the things it said in the document was, I am a man of the soil of Aaron in the kingdom of Yahweh, and I make this affidavit as to truth. Well, it's not going to be a fucking affidavit as to lies, is it, you daft fucker? Affidavit as to truth. But I'm not sneering at those people, but I am very much sneering at whichever villains, whichever really evil people put this nonsense into their heads. Because I would hazard a guess that if they had gone about it the right way, they would probably now be facing Christmas on their farm, where they're now facing destitution. They're facing utter destitution. They're facing utter ruin in their late 60s or early 70s. That's terrible. That's a tragedy. That is a tragedy. And that's why, pseudo law, of all the crank theories and practices out there in the alternative scene, pseudo law it's cancerous. It's like a malignant cancer. It's like asbestos. Any contact with it kills. It's worse than vaccine crankery. It's worse than fluoride woo. It's worse than the 5G shit. They're all just fantasy stuff, really. You don't want to get a vaccine, don't get a vaccine. It's okay. If you believe in 5G, you believe in fluor, whatever. But pseudo law, of all of those things, pseudo law ruins people's lives. It ruins people's lives. And it leaves a trail of destruction in its wake. Moreover, it even wastes time in court. You know what it's like to be in the High Court with, 20 cases ahead of you who are using competent lawyers. Then one cunt gets up and starts talking about being a son of Era. And, go, fuck off. Get out of here, you cunt. Fucking walk. And blah, 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 blah. And Magna Carta. And, of course, this is a maritime court. And, no, fucking stop. Get out of here. Get out of here, you fucking idiot. And this has been going on now for over 10 years. RTE did an excellent documentary back in the time, and I'm linking it here. RTE did a primetime documentary called A Matter of Trust. That was in the time when RTE did good stuff before Jon Williams took over news and current affairs and turned it into a Varadkar woke propaganda 57 genders unit. And that's the truth. That's the truth. RTE tell lies now. But that was a very good documentary. In my opinion, within the English-speaking world, Primetime A Matter of Trust by RTE, I think it was from 2014. I don't recall any other English-language country that did such a good expose of pseudo law and FreeMan and the LAnD. So, I'll wrap it up now because we're approaching 28 minutes here. How time flies. I'm wrapping it up, but you want to come to me telling me to do the research and the common law this and Magna Carta that and how ignorant I am, you can fuck right off my social media page before I block you.